Hi, this is Senator Pat Spearman. I represent Senate District 1 in North Las Vegas. This is the Compassionate Las Vegas podcast.
Welcome to Compassionate Las Vegas, the podcast where we highlight the strength of our city, the spirit of our people, and share your stories of compassion. Again, just welcome to the podcast. This is exciting for me because my good friend, the late Assemblyman Tyrone Thompson, talked about you continually, just with words of adoration. When I first moved to Vegas about 6 years ago to start my church, he said, this is someone you need to talk to. This is someone you can relate to, and you can really model yourself after. So it's a pleasure to meet you face to face virtually today.
That's this past weekend. The 4th weekend passed. You know how you just kind of feel like you're not really with it, and I kept trying to figure out what's going on. My sister's birthday is on the 2nd, and so that was really, really joyous. But on the 4th, it was like, and then it hit me. Oh, wow, this is the 1-year anniversary. And it was like going back in my mind, fast rewind, to going to the hospital and praying with him and staying for a while, and then waking up the next morning to the awful, awful news that he had left us.
Yeah.
But Senator Thompson, Tyrone, is the type of spiritual personality that is never really gone, because the work that he has done lives on in so many different ways. And we have memorialized him in naming buildings and schools, but I think the real honor comes with people like you and I, whose lives he touched and were made better for it. And we know that the scripture tells us that when we reach that door from time to eternity, either way we win. Either way we win. Absent in the body, we're present with Christ. But it just doesn't seem real.
Yeah, it doesn't. So quickly. And I didn't realize it had been a year already. Yeah. I was with him in Carson the week before on the floor. Okay. And when I got the news, I just was like, this isn't possible, because I was just with him.
Yeah.
So it is truly surreal. And then here we are now, a year later, by Zoom because of a virus. Who would have thought?
Yeah. And so you didn't come over to my office while you were in Carson City?
I did not. It was a really quick turnover. He introduced me to like 30 people. And for what we may have stopped by your office, but I don't think you were there. So, but it was a good time. And we did get to pray together as well, because there was, as you know, there's always drama, right? But there was some drama. So we were praying about that too.
Yeah. So, anyway, I'm glad that I was blessed to meet him.
Yes, me too.
Blessed to meet him.
So let's get into this. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Who is Pat Spearman? I know you have 1,000 different titles. So, who are you and how do you define compassion?
So out of all the titles, senator, former pastor, academic doctor, lieutenant colonel, all of those really, really embody, if you will, what I believe compassion is. And by that, I mean, there are so many places that we can show compassion, and in so many different ways. And in all of those ways, they provide me an opportunity to show compassion. And I define compassion by separating the words, the syllables: co-passionate, passionate with something, passionate with someone. And passionate for me means that I see something that's really good, and I put my energy into making it better, or at least sustaining it. And then when you see things that are not so good, then it's that passion for justice and that passion for equity and equality that drives me to want to make a change. So I just do do what I do. I was called to preach when I was 6.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was saying in another interview yesterday that I couldn't read my school books, but I could read the Old Testament. And I could read the long names, the ites and the Achaïas, and I could read all of that, but I could not, that Jane and Spot, man, that was hard. Sometimes I just make it up. I see the dog jumping towards the ball, and I say, the ball, the dog is jumping for the ball, or see Jane run for the ball, or something like that. So I really am. Well, I'm the kind of person that I want to be used by God. I retired from the military, fully retired in 2007. And my friends tease me now and they say, you get an F in retirement. Okay. You didn't learn what that was about. You get an F in retirement. But when you're working for the Lord in whatever capacity, you don't really retire, you refire. And so that's what I'm trying to do now.
I love that. So do you see your work as a senator as an extension of that as well?
Without a doubt. As a senator, it's just, instead of me pastoring a church, and the church that I was pastoring, we'd gotten up to close to 100, almost 100 people. Okay. I say now I have 128,000 or 130, whatever the population is for the district. That's how many people that I pastor. And I see it as an extension because before getting elected, I would always have to call somebody to say, here's an issue that a member of my church is having, or this is something that I saw, or can you take a look at this? Now I am that person. And so what I can do now, as I see things that need to be fixed, it really is just a matter of picking up the phone and trying to fix it. So being a senator is more about why God placed me here and making sure that I'm listening to what God wants to do through me while I'm here, and making sure that I'm always available for whatever it is that God wants to use me for. A few weeks ago, I found myself singing that song by the Thompson community, Lord, I'm available to you.
I love that.
My life I give to you, use me as you want to. And so that's really what this is for me. That's really what this, especially in this time of COVID-19, when so many people are suffering. I mean, it's like, God, this has got to be what it felt like for people during the Holocaust, who looked out and they saw and kept asking, God, where are you? God, why did you allow this to happen? And then there was a movie years and years ago, Oh God, and I don't know if you ever saw it. George Burns played God. I just dated myself, didn't I? But he played God, and I think it was Campbell. Anyway, the country senator played the guy who God was after, and all these things were happening, and he finally, cornered him, and he said, God, if you're really God, then why are babies suffering? If you're really God, why are old people dying and they're alone? If you're really God, and he just went through all these litanies, and the persona of, quote, God said, I'm not allowing this to happen. You all are doing this. You all are doing this. I put all the goodness in the world, and I put all the goodness that I have in you. I put all of the mercy and the compassion. I put all of that in you. So don't blame this on me. This is really about, why aren't you all doing something? Why aren't you all doing something? So it's like, this is an extension ministry, if you will. I don't know if I answered your question. Sometimes I kind of get wrapped up in the question and go a little bit further, but in a time like this, when you look at people who are losing loved ones, and they can't be with their loved one in those final moments, and they, because a virus like this still lives in your body, even when your body functions stop. there's not that closure of seeing and being able to touch, or there's not that it's just like it ended and you didn't get a chance to say or do anything. And that's traumatizing. It's traumatizing, and in some ways it can be emotionally debilitating. So they're living with that, and they're also living with job loss. They're living with, financial, inevitable financial catastrophe. In a time like this, I believe God has placed me here and others so that as we see those things that need to be corrected, instead of picking up the phone and calling somebody saying, "Can you help me?" It's a matter of me picking up the phone and calling the agency or calling the organization or whatever and giving them my title so that they pay attention, but then going on to describe to them the help that I need for someone else.
Yeah, that's powerful. I think you spark so many different things for me in that statement. One of the things that is absolutely evident is your strong faith in God, and that God is the center and really reason for the things that you do. Yeah. Now, I don't want to ignore the pink elephant in the room for a lot of people, okay, which is you are female, mm-hmm, which as a pastor, even in the year 2020, is still somewhat controversial, and you are openly LGBT. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about that in that journey.
Yeah, and the other elephant in the room is I'm Black.
And you're Black, yes. Yeah.
And so I often say when you put those three together, I'm African American, I'm a woman, and I'm a member of the LGBTQ community. You cannot be more marginalized than I am unless you're a Disney character. Okay. Right. Goofy comes to mind. All right. Yeah. And so what this really means is that in Genesis, when God made everything, and the last verse there in 1 says, and God said everything was good. People may not be able to understand how committed to diversity God is, but I get it. And when you look at someone like me, who God called, and God called all of me to the table. God didn't say, leave your Blackness over here. God didn't say, leave your womanist over here. God didn't say, leave your gayness over here. God said, I am calling you. And God knew who I was when God called me. And God knows who I am while yet God uses me. When I was younger and in ministry, the thing that I always had to deal with was male pastors wanting to ignore the call that God had on my life. And I would, when I was a child and when I was a teenager, I would, out of respect, wouldn't say anything. But as Paul said, when I was a child, I spoke like a child. Mm-hmm. But when I grew up, Lordy, have mercy. Okay. I wasn't about to take that. And then after I went to seminary and learned even more and learned I learned the text from the original languages, from Hebrew and from Greek and learned how some of that, what Jesus spoke wasn't really Greek, and it was a little bit of Hebrew, but it would be classified more like we say Ebonics. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so it took Paul coming along and interpreting that interpretation, if you will. I am who I am, and I am who I am unapologetically. And when you see God use me, you can't deny that God calls people just like me. Other people may not be able to accept it, but God didn't ask their permission. That's the good part about it. When God called me, God didn't say, hey, let's call so-and-so and see if they're okay with this. God was like, this is what I'm getting ready to do. And if you don't like it, sorry about your luck.
So how does all of that, these many facets of who you are, how does that shape your approach to compassion?
Because I've been dismissed. I've been dissed. I've been disrespected. Whatever has hurt me often has been minimized. And, you hear the saying, hurt folk.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I like to turn that around. When you're hurt, get help so that you can help people.
I love
when
it.
hurt folk
Yeah.
get help, hurt folk help people.
Mm-hmm.
And so the lens that I always look through is, how would I feel if this happened to me? You know, how would I feel if this happened to me? Dealing with someone, you know, who is a pastor and having a real hard time with how to minister to their flock, because they themselves are going through this wide range of emotions. So when people like that call me, I'm like, I understand, I get it, because I was a pastor at one time. What can I do tangibly? I'm going to pray with you and I'm going to pray for you, but what can I do tangibly? When people have called me about being out of work, they've been laid off, and I was getting a lot of calls in March about people who their mortgage companies and the servicing companies were acting real crazy about, you know, stopping the payments and then not affecting their credit. I remember what that felt like, because I bought my house at the top of the bubble here in Vegas.
Yeah.
And then, so when it started going down, there was a period in time when I was $335,000 upside down in my house, and trying to negotiate with the servicing company, who they basically said, miss 2 or 3 payments and then we can help you. And I'm like, well, that's crazy. You know, so I remember what that felt like. And when they called me and told me what was going on, and they're really at wit's end. You know, Senator, I've been trying to get this done for the last 2 weeks, and the mortgage is going to be due. I don't have the money, and unemployment will kick in at some time, but I don't know. And the little money that I have, I'm trying to make sure that there's food in the house. Okay, the utilities have said we will give you a grace period, but the mortgage company. And so I was able to pick up the phone and call someone on our federal delegation and say, this is not what you intended the banks to do, correct? No, it was not. Well, this is what's happening. What's the name of the bank and who were they talking to? Being in this position and having those private cell phone numbers, it was like within 15 minutes, it was done. And it wasn't me, but like I said, God has me here so that I can do things like that. And when I called the person back, they said, oh, Senator said, I just got a call from them and they were apologetic and everything like that. I said, well, that's good. And I called the person back who helped me. And I said, will you do me a favor? Will you make sure that you talk to the CEO, the CFO, the COO, all of those alphabets in the C-suite? Make sure you talk to them and tell them that if they do this again, there will be consequences. You can't do this to people who through no fault of their own have all of a sudden been thrown into this cataclysmic response to a disease that we don't have a vaccine for.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because you just, the emotion that you brought out in me through that story is really powerful, because I'm reflecting on my own situation. And thankfully, my employer allows me to work from home during this, so I'm not missing all of my income. However, I'm also a wedding officiant, and with the Strip shut down, I'm not getting any of that income, and I can't file for unemployment because I'm still fully employed. And, there are all of these hoops and hurdles. Thankfully, I'm in a position where I'm not missing a mortgage payment, but I could be. And I always try to look at compassion kind of through that lens of, it could be me in this situation, and how would I want to be dealt with?
Yeah.
As a senator, a lot of people think that your job may be one thing. Can you help us to understand what you are doing through stories just like that, but on a real tangible day-to-day basis? You're out of session right now. What are you still actively able to do? What's the best way for people to reach out to you? And what type of information do they need to provide in that process? So
when people have an issue or problem, what I usually ask them to do is send me an email, and our email addresses are online. You go to the NevadaLegislature.com or .gov, go there, and all of our contact information is there. And that's the best way to do it, because then I have written permission from you to act on your behalf. as it were. So because there's some things that I can't talk to other people about unless I have your permission to do so. That email gives me permission. A lot of what I've been doing this time around is, like I said, just really, in a lot of ways, just being a pastor. I mean, really, that's just being a pastor. People have issues, people have problems. And like I said, earlier, as a pastor, let's pray. But I believe, when you get on your knees, you pray like it all depends on God. And when you get up, you work like it all depends on you. And together, God makes something happen, something good happen for you. So a lot of what I've been doing is looking at what's going on and checking with our legal folks to say, this is what I have observed. Tell me if we have anything that addresses it. There was a statement made in one of the papers about getting information on people who pass away with COVID-related illnesses. Well, I don't think that's anybody's business. I don't think the name, the address, I don't think that's anybody's business. What we need are the numbers, but to understand that behind the numbers, there are people, okay? And so I have them looking into that because I need to make sure that people's privacy is not destroyed because we're trying to get information about this disease. We need who it was in terms of gender, in terms of race or ethnicity and age, but we don't need all that other stuff. I'm also looking at potential legislation. What do we need to do to make sure that the very next time, and there will be a next time, what do we need to do to make sure that the very next time this happens, we are ready for it? I've been looking at the ways in which our mental health systems have failed us during this time, have failed our seniors, or as I like to refer to them, our seasoned citizens. It has failed women and children who are living in abusive situations. It has failed people who were already dealing with depression. It has failed our veterans who are coping with PTSD. It has failed people who are recovering alcoholics or recovering substance abuse. It has failed in all of those ways. Why? Because we did not put something in place so that in their isolation, those who were being in abusive situations, those who were living in abusive situations would have a way to reach out and say, help me. And then that help would entail getting them out of there. It did not include ways to say to our seniors, because everybody can't do what we're doing. Everybody doesn't know how to use a computer. So it did not deal with how do we make sure we're checking in and we're making sure that our seniors have a way to have some type of contact with people. How do we make sure that person who has not had a drink in 10 years and they work on the strip and they don't know what's going to happen with their job, whether they'll be the ones called back or one of the ones that'll get, quote, the letter. How are we helping them not to take that drink? Mm-hmm. And those are all the things that I see we should have been doing. And that's not difficult. Does it take some money? Yes, it takes some money, but there are monies available at the federal level that we can draw down and then leverage, watch this, leverage with community organizations and faith-based organizations. Because, well, as I said before, pastors are doing this work. They're doing this work. And I think I read somewhere where 6 out of every 10 people that find themselves in a situation where they need help, whether it's medical, financial, whatever it is, 6 out of every 10 people, you know who they call first?
Their pastor.
Exactly.
Let me ask you this. I'm going to let you in on this is exclusive for you. I have not talked about this with anyone else. But one of the things that I did when I first moved to Vegas was coaching. So I'm a certified life coach, and I've been doing that for a long time and had some really great successes. Mm-hmm. One of the challenges I face in this situation is I can't be reimbursed for that type of service. I can't bill the government for that service but people need what I offer for them to reinvent themselves, for them to discover their transferable skills, and others like me that do this type of work, that our rates are just above what people can afford in this time, but they need this. Is there a way that we can reimagine the system so that we can put pastors and coaches and others back to work, and they can be compensated while still providing that service without the fee burden being on the people?
Yeah. And that's what I mean. Desperate times like this call for, and, sometimes people say, we got to think out of the box. But one of the chair of my dissertation committee had this thing. She said, whenever you say think outside the box is still a reference. It's still a reference. So I don't say think outside the box. Her word was refractive thinking, which means throw the box away, no reference to the box. This is the situation. What resources do we have around us that we can pull together collectively and comprehensively? And now how do we address the problem based upon the new visualization of the resources that we have? So what you just described, you can call it life coaching, but for some people, it's getting with someone about emotional well-being. Now, I'm clear that there's a difference between a trained therapist and a life coach. I'm clear about that. But until somebody can get to a therapist, or until somebody can mentally wrap their head around, I need a therapist, sometimes they're going to come to you. So here are the things that we could be doing with our medical system here in Nevada, even in the country, okay? We could be looking at the statistics that I just said. 6 out of every 10 people are going to their pastors. Okay, they're going to their pastors right now. Pastors are doing all that they can to lift them up and to keep them, focused on, there's a brighter day, Kirk Franklin, brighter day, there's a brighter day, but at the end of the day, pastors need help too.
That's right.
And some of that comes right down to, how do we support your work? Because you're doing the work of someone who is helping people in our community that need that help. Who knows? But the person that you talk to, they could have been 5 minutes away of completing suicide had they not talked to you.
Often they are.
And listen, and I've been there as a pastor. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've been there. Somebody comes across your mind, and somebody comes across my mind 2 or 3 times, and it gets real strong, and especially when that happens, and I feel it in my heart. I say, let me call so-and-so. And whenever that's happened, it has always been when they have been at their lowest and they felt like there just was no use in living. We ought to have a system in place that has pastors. And I'm not talking about people who, went online and did a search. How do I get a license to preach? Or I'm not talking about that.
Oh yeah, that's a whole different ball game.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm talking, we have standards, we have metrics that say meet these standards and conform to these metrics. And now you're qualified to participate as one of our support partners. And for that, we will compensate you. Maybe it's not compensating per person, but maybe it is a compensation that allows you to still be able to do what you do and pay your bills without saying, I can't do anything right now because I can't be compensated. And it's not all about the money.
No, it's not. The money is not the issue. It's being able, as you said, to pay your bills. Yeah. As a pastor, you know as well as anyone, all that work isn't free. It's emotionally taxing. It's physically taxing. It's mentally taxing. And yet you still have to perform your job as a senator. You still have to do whatever other work you're doing. And I think a lot of people don't recognize how valuable local pastors are because they see the big names on TV with the huge churches and the luxury lifestyles, not even necessarily knowing, like, if you average out their salary per person, they're making less than the pastor that has 30 members per person, another talk show. But they see these big names and they think that every pastor is living like that, not knowing that they put in 16 and 20-hour days and don't have anyone else that they can call. So I love that you're aware of that and that you bring that part into the conversation. As we reimagine Vegas, as we reimagine Nevada, as we reimagine the world, what is possible in the immediate moment? What do you see as possible in the the future?
More community collaborations. And let me just stay with the example that we were just talking about. Last session, I had a bill, and I'm trying to remember the number. I think it was Senate Bill 206. And that was a suicide prevention bill. But it was a suicide prevention bill that was designed to help teachers, counselors, administrators, and even students be able to identify some of the signs of suicide ideation, and then make sure that we had in place, something in place so that they could go one place and find a lot of resources. That was brought to me by my youth legislator, who opened his testimony by saying, by reading his suicide note.
Wow.
that he wrote in 2018, in February of 2018, and he was testifying on the bill in February 2019. And just saying, he didn't know where to go. He didn't know who to talk to. He just didn't know. And excuse me, he got to the place where he just felt like giving up. And so he said, I took a bunch of pills. I wrote this note to my parents, the note that I just read, and then I laid down. My mother came to my room, and if my mother had not come to my room, I would not be here today. He said, but there are a lot of people just like me. A lot of students, just like me. So what the bill did was, it not only said, let's work with counselors, therapists, psychologists, and psychiatrists, but the other thing that the bill does? There are churches around schools in the neighborhood. You have members of your church who either have children that go to school, or some of the students in your congregation still go to school. In other words, you have access to people who are in these situations, in these locations. Well, what the bill says is, look outside the school and begin to partner with faith-based organizations to make sure we have the perimeter around our children is not porous in any way. We can always reach them. And as I said before, it's not just somebody that got online and, let me look up and see how I can get this license to preach, or, oh God, the price of gas just went up. I've been called to preach because I need money.
Right.
Not that, but what I see moving forward is a paradigm just like that, where all of us are called together to address a community catastrophe, a community emergency, a community pandemic, whatever it is, whether it's a hurricane, it's flooding, or it's fires, but we're called together to say, I might not be able to do everything, but I can do something. And the way that I like to put it is, we might not have it all together, but together we can have it all.
I love that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, so we can't leave anybody out. So that's what I see. And I want us in this time, I want us to get that there are other resources that we have. And when we draw down federal monies, looking at the community and saying what resources do we have here that can help us? What resources do we have? We have people that are delivering food to individuals, and they're delivering food based upon the requests that come in. But you know what? I bet I could probably call 4 or 5 pastors and double the number of people or triple the number of people who need food. So if we're working with faith-based organizations, it's not that the individual deliveries are not, they are warranted because everybody doesn't go to church. But if we can pull all of these resources, the needs together, and say, so how do we address that? with four or five pastors of small churches, that's probably about 300 people that need help doing something. That's what I want. I want to see us do refractive thinking outside the box, throw the box away, no reference to the box whatsoever. This is the problem. Let's gather all the resources in. Here's the problem. Here are the resources. Now, this is how we can use each one of these pieces of that puzzle to address this singular issue that is facing all of us in the community.
With the change of our economy, do you foresee Vegas returning to what it once was? Or do you see that we'll have to employ that refractive thinking and truly create a new reality for our brothers and sisters in this community?
Some of what it was before this was good, but some of what it was not so good. Those not so good pieces or areas, they are going away, because I think what people are realizing is that the world has moved on, and so we must move on too. One of the things that concerns me is the job displacement. I read in a couple of different places that we're probably looking at 20% on the low end and as much as 30% on the high end of people whose employment is connected to gaming that will not have a job. It won't happen. They just will not. 2 paragraphs below that, and I'm trying to remember the study that I read that from, but 2 paragraphs below that, the people who will be unemployed or displaced will be people who are 47, between the ages of 47 and 62.
Wow.
Let that sink in for a minute.
Yeah.
A 50-year-old who has worked in the gaming industry, but has been furloughed or laid off. And listen, I don't blame the employers, okay, because they're suffering too. That's not what I'm saying. Who's going to hire them? Because one of the things that happens when people have to cut personnel is you look at personnel in toto. It's not just the salary. It's the health care. It's the likelihood that something will happen. All those things that happen to people as we get older. And here's the irony. We started off talking about how utterly impossible it was and still is to wrap our minds around the fact that Tyrone Thompson, who's only 52, is gone. But you have people who are 62 and we're throwing them away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? So the thing that I want to see happen, I want to see a push to identify workers who have been displaced either because of the economic situation of the pandemic or who are displaced because of technology. Because a lot of the jobs are, even those who come back to work, their jobs are still at risk because of technology and innovation.
That's a huge point. And that's something that's been at the forefront of the political landscape, particularly in the Democratic Party, for this entire election cycle. So as someone that has been visiting Vegas since I was a wee toddler and, seeing the difference in the way things are done now, I went to the buffet and had to get my own. Right. I'll be going back soon. But when I first started going, the server brought me my drink and made everything. It was just a different experience. I went for, I think, Thanksgiving or Christmas a few years ago, and I'm like, I got to get my own drink. What is this? Yeah. So the landscape is changing. Now they have the computerized, I don't know what you call it, but AI, I guess, bartenders and the chefs are now, automated. All of these things are changing. How do we make sure the 62-year-old that has this wisdom and can provide that guidance and a listening ear and support? How can we provide them stability when there isn't a job for them?
Well, I think the first thing that we have to do is be real about the fact that what we have done is, whether consciously or subconsciously, we've been practicing ageism, and that is all of the intelligence, all of the strength, everything lies in young people, while those who are above a certain age, well, you all move off the scene because young people are here. That is not theologically sound. And here's why. Because scripture tells us, I call the young because they're strong and they can run. But I call the old because they know the way. And so this has to be a collective endeavor. Here's what I think we should be doing. Now that we've gotten used to the online learning environment, let's use that to teach people new skills, whatever those skills, whatever they may be. AI is coming in, or it's already here. And, even now, I don't care if you call any business, you're going to go through 4 prompts with somebody who lives inside the telephone, telling you press this number or whatever. Oh, that is, 6 is not a valid extension. Please press again. You're going to have that.
Yeah, and I yell at the phone every time. Person. I want a real person.
And listen, and sometimes we're online and, we're looking for something, and then this little screen pops up and says, can I help you? And, every time I do this, I start typing something as though I'm talking to you. And then the response that I get is, please break it down to me in 2 or 3 words. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's right. This is a computer.
Exactly.
Okay. It's AI. Okay. So that's already happening. We should be retraining people so that they can still have a job. One of the things that I think we ought to be doing with people who are above a certain age, if they are so inclined, we need more people in childcare. When I was in Texas, one of the things that we did, we had what I called our WOW ministry, World of Wisdom. And that's why I call them seasoned citizens, because after a certain age, you can say, oh yeah, I've been there before. And I know what that means. And so what we had with the WOW ministry, we also had an after school program, Roots. And the AKAs, the undergrad chapter, the AKAs of Southwest Texas University, helped us get that started. And they also provided the tutors. So Roots stands for Rearing Our Own to Succeed. We have kids coming to this, and we start off like Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday afternoon, and they'd be coming for tutoring. And the kids that were in school would come for tutoring, but they'd also have their younger brothers and sisters coming. You know why? Because we fed them. We fed them. And their younger brothers and sisters came because they were going to eat. Now, I know how to cook, but really I don't like to cook. Okay? I don't like to cook. And that's, this whole thing about COVID has really kind of, put me, in some kind of way here, because I don't like to cook.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So you know who cooked the meals?
Who was that?
World of Wisdom.
Collaboration right there.
Exactly. They became surrogate grandparents.
Yeah.
And not only did they cook the meals, and we kept it real simple. The little snack was peanut butter and jelly. Okay. And then peanut butter and jelly, that was just something to, get their stomach to quiet down while they did whatever work it was they had. Their younger brothers and sisters didn't have work, but they would come in and they would be wearing the backpack of their older sibling. Watch this. They'd be wearing the backpack of their older sibling. The sibling would take whatever books or homework out of that, and then they would go and sit down in the corner and they would just look around. So the other thing that World of Wisdom did? They helped us collect books on Sunday. so that, and books, if people didn't have them, they would buy them. Books that could be read to young people, to kids, 5 and 6 and under. And you'd have the AKAs over here helping, doing the tutoring. And over in another corner, you would have 4 or 5 members of WOW sitting there reading to these kids, or talking about what it felt like, because we did it in one of the historic buildings in San Marcos, talking about what it was like to go to school in that building when it was the quote colored school, and sharing with them that history. We had people to come in and talk about fishing. Let's maybe you want to go on a fishing trip. We had people to come in and talk about what it means to work in this industry or that industry. WOW did that because the generation between WOW and our students was working, trying to make a living. Okay? But both of them needed each other, because for WOW, it gave them purpose, or at least it helped them reclaim their purpose, because somebody needs me. And when those kids, after a couple of weeks, when those kids would come in, they would start looking, for, where's Miss Mary? She's not, is she coming? Miss Mary will be here. She'll be here. Or Miss Mary's still in the kitchen cooking. Okay. Now, I heard from several of the members of WOW, and, one lady came to me and she's crying. She said, Reverend, none of my family's here. None of my family. And we didn't have computers like this where you could do FaceTime. None of my family's here. But she said, working with these kids has really given me joy. So how come we can't use the people whose lives will be turned upside down to interact with that younger generation? I'm sorry. We don't pay them worth anything. Our childcare workers, our preschool workers, we don't pay them. And so what we need to be doing is trying to figure out how we restructure the federal tax system so that it works for people. And when we restructure it and look at it from the standpoint of, we must invest in education, and we must invest in preschool, and we must invest in childcare, because the people that you want to go to work, if they don't have somebody that can watch their child, they're not going to be there all the time. Okay, so it's a win-win. So instead of childcare workers making minimum wage, these seasoned citizens, 47 to 62, that want to, they're not forced into it, but that want to work in the industry where we need people who have empathy and who can do this. And by the way, let's pay them $22 an hour, because it's worth it. We'll pay them $22 an hour, start with, because the money that we pay them right now is money that will not be going to the penal system in 15 years.
That's a huge point. It's finding where, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little excited with that. It's one of those things that you have to look at the full investment, not just the immediate dollar amount, but what's the ROI long term? Mm-hmm. And you bring up so many different things. We could talk all day. I'm going to ask you one more question, then I'll wrap us up here. Okay. But something that you mentioned that I think is important is we don't pay people what they're worth. How do you feel about using some sort of basic income structure like what Martin Luther King Jr. talked about? So I believe in the quote, fight for 15. But I believe that when we start talking about income structure, what we have to do is look at how technology and innovation is changing the workplace, and how the workforce is developing. Because we continue to fight for 15, and guess what happens? I had to go to the store today to get some things. Somebody told me that they had paper towels. Mm-hmm. and I was out, they told me they had paper towels one place, and I went there, no paper towels. I got there too late. Went another place, no paper towels, got there, and I also needed bleach. Okay.
I'm trying to get out of there because I need to get back home. There were 24 self-serve kiosks and 7 lanes with a real person there. What does that tell you?
Yeah.
The people who are working there may not be making $15 an hour, but they're blessed to have a job because those kiosks are taking over. And you've probably heard about the Apple store where they don't have anybody in there, basically. You got 1 or 2 people, but you go in there and you can, scan this code or whatever and, pick up something, buy something without even exchanging money.
Yeah, several stores are going that way.
Yeah. So when we talk about an income structure, here's what I say. Let's make sure that people have the employability skills so that no one can tell them how much they can earn or what their income should be. Give them the skill set that makes them valuable and irreplaceable. And if and when it happens that they are replaced, now what they can do is become an entrepreneur. Because, that's all the gig workforce is. It's entrepreneurs. Should we have $15 an hour? Maybe, but should we have 20? Should we have 25? I say, let's not limit it. But at the same time, while we're fighting for that and making sure that, here's the other thing, let me say this. Social Security is not going bankrupt. But the way Social Security is structured, you and I will probably pay into Social Security all of our working lives. Because I don't know that I'm not going to reach $200,000, $250,000. I think that's where the cap is. I'm not going to reach that. Not in my working lifetime. Okay. We got to remove the cap. Remove the cap so that all income is subject to Social Security. Remove it. Because when you do that, then that means the person who earns $86 million a year, that is taxed according to the Social Security standards.
How can someone like me, someone that doesn't have the title of senator in front of their name, how can I actually help to bring that about?
You preach, you have a church, you have friends.
Yeah.
I say, talk about it. And these are things that will come up again because these are things that I've thought about a lot. And I'm really trying to figure out how we make it happen. But I'm going to need voices like yours and voices like your listeners. Because as I said before, with the right revenue structure, a lot of the things that we keep saying is beyond our reach. It's not beyond our reach. It's beyond our reach because we have antiquated revenue structures. So let's fix that. And that can only happen when people say there's got to be a better way, a more humane way to do this. Okay? So we're going to train workers so that there's not this stratification that if you work in a grocery store, oh, no. We realize how important the grocery store workers are. There's not this stratification based upon income that this person is low and this person is high, because we're putting all of our resources, our financial resources, into training, retraining. We're putting our financial resources into supplying services where we said we didn't have people for those services. We're putting our financial resources into having, this is what I'd like to see for Nevada. I'd like to see us have a standing committee, IT committee or technology committee. And you know what they'd be doing? Their only task would be, this is 2020, what's going to be happening in 2027 that we need to get ready for. And then as they identify that, they come back and they work to see how do we make it happen, because it's got to happen not just at the workforce, but we got to look at this from the standpoint, by the time 2027 gets here, the people that are right now in 8th grade, they'll be out of school. Okay, so what do they need to know when they get out of school? And don't push everybody into college. A lot of people just want to go to trade and technical school. Some people don't need to do that. Some people have already worked and they have garnered enough knowledge to have their own business. So let's support that. Does that answer your question?
It gives me a lot, and you've given us so much in this time. So I'm grateful for your wisdom, for your courage, for
I'm not ready to stop.
yeah, for everything. And it's truly an honor. I think I'm going to have to break this one up into two parts because it's just so full and so many different vital issues. My thing right now really is, what can I do as an individual that can make Las Vegas a more compassionate city to live, to work, to play in? We are where the world comes, so why not change the world right here? Yeah. So I think you've given us a lot that we can work with.
Census. On that. The census. Everybody ought to fill out the census. Everybody, because the child care that I talked about, the job retraining, all of those things, healthcare, all of those things, we draw federal money down based upon the number of people who are in a state. And everybody ought to be filling out the census. And I'm asking everybody who has any kind of a megaphone, microphone, whatever you have, make sure somehow every day you're saying, did you fill out the census? Did you fill out the census? And don't get duped by people who say, well, they want to get, no, we want that information because we need those dollars. The next thing that I would say is make sure that people fill out and mail in their ballots. That this is going to be critical. And last but not least, I would say learn the lesson of 2016, and people who want to do a protest vote. The protest vote is voting for the person who's running against the guy in the White House right now who didn't take this pandemic serious. And we've now lost 80,000 people. The protest vote is to vote for the person who's running against the guy who put kids in cages. That's the protest vote. And we ought to see right now Ahmaud Arbery, and I hope I'm Ahmaud Arbery, in broad daylight. Come on, and they had the tape, 2 months, and nothing happened. And then you have pictures of politicians in Georgia in high places that are taking selfies with these guys. Okay? So the protest vote is vote for the guy is going to make sure that, as Dr. King said, justice will roll down like a mighty river. That's the protest vote. Go out and vote and tell people we got to make a change.
I think we can leave it there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Treat others how you'd like to be treated.
And that's the golden rule.
Camp Anytown has taught me that knowledge is power, and if I utilize my voice, I can make a difference in the world, no matter how big or small.
I learned that as long as we stand together, we can accomplish so much more.
What Camp Anytown has taught me is that I am not crazy to think I can change the world. I'm crazy if I think I can do it alone.
Camp Anytown has taught me that just because I'm different does not mean I don't belong.
I learned at Camp Anytown to be more compassionate because you never know what somebody else is going through.
Camp Anytown is a no-cost youth leadership camp that trains high school students in diversity, community, and inclusivity. When you choose the Golden Rule license plate, you play a part in a local camp that helps shape a better tomorrow. Learn more at dmvnv.com.